Yes, Derek, now home improvement is something unfortunately we're all going to have to tackle at one stage in our lives. What would you normally do? Well, you'd normally go to an expert, wouldn't you? That's what we're advised to do. And how would you come across that expert? Well, you might go in the Yellow Pages, you might look at the back of your local newspaper, but really you don't know who it is you're inviting into your home. Well, some lady who came across that exact problem herself is Jo Bahari. Now, she decided to do something about it, and in fact she's now grown an incomplete empire that is starting to cover the whole of the UK. To tell us more about this incredible feat and how in fact we can do some DIY ourselves at home before we even need to resort to the experts is Jo herself. Now, thank you for joining us this morning, Jo. Now, as I said, it all started really quite by accident, didn't it? You needed some DIY doing and you realised that the only people available were typically men and people that might necessarily be coming from a company.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first bought a property, I needed lots of things doing, but at the time I didn't have the time to do it myself. Being pretty hands-on, I didn't mind getting stuck in, but I was in a job that I was working all hours and I just didn't have time to do it. And there were a couple of occasions where I had to get people in to do things like plumbing and electrical work, and I found the whole process really frustrating. They were very unreliable, didn't turn up when they said they were going to, charged an arm and a leg.
Something a lot of people find, don't they?
Absolutely, and left mess everywhere, and I just found the whole process really frustrating. And I remember thinking to myself one day, wouldn't it have been nice if I could have got a woman round to do that?
They do tend to know best, but it's the typical thing, isn't it? Now, I don't want to be stereotypical, but when we think of builders, we think of men. The same as when we think of nurses or hairdressers, we tend to think of women. It's just something that's inbred within us, but it doesn't have to be that way, particularly nowadays. You know, all careers are open to all people and women can do a job just as well as men can.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. And I think there are a lot of things in the building industry that inevitably men can do better than women, but also the reverse is true. You know, a lot of plumbers have to get into really tight spaces, under baths, behind basins, and if you're a big burly guy, that's very difficult to do.
Exactly, so men might have the brawn and the strength that women may not have, but as you say, it's all swings and roundabouts and everyone has their own strengths. So you of course found that, you from experience, you had some builders come in and like you said, it was incredibly frustrating. So what did you decide to do about it?
Well, the other thing that I noticed when I decided to get people in was that I was often being patronised to, and I felt a bit intimidated by the whole process. And also being a woman living on my own, I felt quite vulnerable. And I all of a sudden thought, well, how many other women must feel like this, and how frustrating must it be for so many other people out there? When I thought about getting a woman round to do the work, I realised after a bit of research there were lots of women out there doing this kind of trade work. But no companies. And as a consumer, I wanted to go to a company so that I could have accountability. I know that, you know, dealing with sole traders can often be very scary because you don't know if they're just going to disappear without your money.
Well, that's it. You sort of do go in blind, don't you? And you kind of take for granted that what they're going to tell you is fact. And sometimes we all hear about it. Some cowboy builders can take advantage of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of thought at the time, well, you know, if there aren't any companies out there doing it, but there are people like me that want this service, then why not give it a go and see if I can make a business out of it? So you yourself are actually quite good at DIY. We're going to have a look now at how to, we're going to talk more obviously about the Young Maids Adventure in a minute, but we're going to look at now how we can actually do a tap ourselves. Is that, have I got that right? Absolutely, yeah. I think being able to do your own DIY at home is a really, really important life skill. Something like being able to change a tap washer is really, is a crucial thing to know if you own your own property or live in a flat.
And I'd put my hands up, if I needed a tap changing, I probably would call in an expert because I'd be too apprehensive to start getting involved and possibly making the situation worse. But you're going to show us now that that isn't the case at all.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the first thing that you need to do when you're going to do anything to do with plumbing is make sure the water is turned off. You can turn your water off at your stopcock, which is normally in your kitchen or at the first point of water in the property. Nowadays, you can even isolate water near the actual taps themselves. But once your water is off and you're confident that the water is off...
That's such a basic point as well, isn't it? And it's something that it could cause havoc if you don't do that, but it's quite easy to find.
If there's one thing that I can encourage anybody to do is to go and find their stopcock. 100% ensure that you know how to turn the water off, because if you do have a major leak and you don't know how to turn the water off, you could cause serious damage. And it's something that's fairly easy to find out where the water can be turned off, and it can save you a lot of money in terms of getting emergency plumbers out.
And if you're moving into a new property, then you ask somebody where that, you know, you can ask the person that's selling you the property where that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay.
So once your water's off, taps are fairly easy to dismantle, but if you look at this, you know, as somebody that doesn't know, it's very difficult to know how you get access to it.
Yeah, definitely.
On a tap like this, you can just pop off the top lip here, and inside you'll see a screw. Just take a normal screwdriver and you can open up, hopefully.
So what would you recommend then is sort of a standby kit? Because often it's sort of seen as the man drawer, isn't it, where you keep all the bits and bobs, but it should be a person drawer. exclusive to men. So what sort of top 3 items or 4 items do you think a woman should always have in a house?
I think a set of screwdrivers is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
A hammer and a drill.
Right.
It's not, a drill isn't an intimidating piece of kit, so make sure you get one because they're really, really useful to have around the house.
Okay.
So a set of screwdrivers and a spanner is something that you can use fairly easily to actually dismantle your tap.
And generally you can buy them all together as a set, can't you?
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
one
And you know,
swift
10 to
purchase.
£15 for a set of screwdrivers, perfectly reasonable cost. Some places you can get them even cheaper. And you can even buy tools in most supermarkets these days, so you don't need to go anywhere special to get them.
Brilliant.
Once you've got your screw out, you can take off the top part of your tap, which is the casing, and exposed inside is the cartridge. You take an adjustable spanner and you can actually undo this cartridge. If you don't have the water turned off at this point, this is when water will start gushing out of the tap. And this is fairly easy to undo with an adjustable spanner. This bit here is the tap's cartridge, and you can see here 2 separate washers.
Right.
Either of these things might be the thing that has worn away and is causing a tap to drip.
So that's all it could be, is literally erosion, just something worn away.
Exactly. These are just made out of rubber, so limescale can erode these fairly easily. So if you live in a high limescale area, this can really cause your taps to drip.
Right.
And actually leaking taps are a massive cause of water wastage in the UK.
As well as being frustrating as well, and sometimes you can't get to sleep because the tap's leaking. But
Absolutely.
to call somebody out for that seems like quite unnecessary.
Yeah, and you might have to wait or pay a lot of money, but you know, if you know you can do it yourself. I would also say you can get a selection of washers from most hardware stores, but if you're unsure about what you need, take this into a plumber's merchant or into a hardware store with you and say, I need one of these, please. And they'll be able to help you.
So it doesn't matter if you don't know the lingo, it's literally a little bit of common sense and just not having the fear. I think that's what holds a lot of women back, isn't it? You might think, oh, I might be able to do it, but you just don't have the confidence to do it. Whereas men, as a typical rule, do tend to be a little bit more, you know, they're sort of people don't want to ask for directions, don't want to ask for help, and that gives them sort of the more confidence to do it, whereas women hold back. And, and we don't need to.
No, and most plumbers merchants and hardware stores are really helpful. So if you've got one local to you and you can build a good relationship with them, then whenever you do have a problem, they'll be able to help you kind of solve it.
Definitely. Now you've actually built up a company, haven't you? So we'll go back to the story and the journey that you started. So you decided that, you know, there was really a niche there that needed to be filled, and have you found that that's been filled quite quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. We started off with a fairly small team about 4 years ago. There were about 4 of us working on fairly minor jobs, but within a very, very short space of time we were doing fairly substantial projects, and I was kind of inundated with work.
And that's a nice problem to have, isn't it, that there's too many people needing
Yeah,
service.
absolutely. And you know, for us, I was quite surprised at how quickly it took off, and I realised that actually there's a real demand out there for this. So you know, we kind of established and started growing the business in a more structured manner, I guess.
So who are your typical customers? Is it tend to be women or elderly, or people feel a bit more vulnerable?
I would say majority are women living on their own, but it's actually only a small majority. When I first started the business, I thought it might be about 90%, but it's not that at all. I think actually now we've built up a reputation for having good customer service. People don't use us just because we're women, they use us because we provide a good level of service.
Because it's going to be of a high standard, exactly. So
that's right.
And that's essentially all you want, isn't it? You just want safe, good, reliable service, which is what you offer. Now, if you do want any more information, Jo's website will be mentioned on our blog, and it is in fact home-jane.co.uk. So nice and easy message to remember there. And here's 2 people who I think are quite good at DIY, certainly better than me.
I am hopeless.
Oh, are you?
Absolutely hopeless.
Do you think you could change your tap now?
Shall I have a go and see whether there's anything I can do with the washer? I don't think. Candy, do you do a lot of DIY?
No. My dad always said you either had to know how to do it yourself or be able to afford to get somebody in to do it.
Yeah.
I'm hopeless. I think as well, the prospect of having ladies come around and do the work, I think you kind of think, you'll get the impression that they're not going to sit around eating tea and drinking tea and eating biscuits all day.
Yeah.
Women do tend to get on with the job.
There are a lot of people out there, good working class men.
Of course there are.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there is a lot of cowboy builders as well,
but women do like to get on with it, don't they? They like to get a job done, don't they?
And I think they're better at the communication as well, which, you know, it helps when you don't know what you're necessarily asking to be done.
Definitely. See you Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.